Well, we're about today to wrap this up, part three of all
three.
our Teacher of the Year award recipients. It has been such a tremendous, I'll call it a ride.
It's an eye-opener.
Hearing from people and what they're doing. And today is no exception. I know that we haven't done something like this where it's been part one, part two, part three, but I feel like every person has offered something different in ways that I wouldn't have expected. And I love being able to share it.
What I love is that these people come from all over the country and they're introducing concepts to one another. One of the great things about the Herzog Foundation is that we have the privilege of bringing these people together in a way I wouldn't guess before it ever existed. So, you people from Mississippi meeting people from Nebraska, and people from Colorado meeting people from South Carolina, and they're exchanging ideas. And that's what the Herzog Foundation's been doing for the last couple of years, training teachers in schools to work together and share concepts and then
take
grow.
The ideas and the things that they've learned and what Herzog is about, taking it out and back to schools if they haven't heard about us before, or how it can be beneficial, how the Herzog Foundation and the resources that it has can be beneficial. So this has just been phenomenal. We're so excited to share these people with you. So just take a listen.
Our next Teacher of the Year comes to us from our state's capital, the Show Me State, Jefferson City. Jacob Baker is from River Oak Christian, and he is a teacher there for 3 years, but interestingly, made the leap. And we love people that have made the leap. That's the theme of our show. Jacob, congratulations on being a Christian school Teacher of the Year.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Most of your teaching career has been in public school, so you've only been teaching in Christian school for 3, and you're already a Teacher of the Year award recipient, so you must be shining.
Shaking, right?
Oh, well, thank you very much.
Why do you, I know it's hard to brag on yourself, but why do you imagine you have excelled in such a way in such a short period of time?
I think it's because of trying to identify what I feel like God has called me to do. And that's that I feel like what all believers are supposed to do, which is make disciples. And very early on in my life, I realized that I didn't just want to make disciples, but I wanted to make disciples who could make disciples, because I didn't want that process to end. And so one of the things that I do a lot with my students is spend individual time with them, pouring into them spiritually. I teach a class called Personal Discipleship that the kids have fallen in love with, and teach them how to walk every day as a believer. And I think when you're really truly caring and shepherding people like that, it makes an impact on them.
Interesting that you bring that up. I had not really thought about it until you said it. Do Christian schools do that well? We teach it. Obviously, we talk about the Bible. We try to implement it in the lesson plans and things we learn. Discipleship, though, that I don't know that in all the shows we've done.
A lot about lifelong learners, salvation, but not beyond that person, right? So when we're talking about our kids.
Yeah, real world implementation is what you're talking about.
Yes.
I don't know that we focus a lot on that, to be honest.
I've not seen it in many other Christian schools. And when I came on board to a Christian school, I just decided, this is something I'm never going to give up, because I really do believe this is the truth of what Jesus modeled for us. I mean, he didn't go in church and pastor 10,000 people. He impacted very closely. He had circles of influence. He started with 3, Peter, James, and John. Then he had 12 disciples who he took everywhere. The Bible also talks about the 70 that followed him, places that he sent out, and then he had 120 on the final day that he was speaking to. And it was one of those things that impacted me so greatly when I saw that, if Jesus really focused in on a small group of people and wanted to make this intentional and deep dive impact on them by having them follow him and do everything he did, that must mean something. And especially not only that, but Paul talked about it too. He told Timothy, imitate me as I imitate Christ. He told the Corinthian church, imitate me as I imitate Christ. And I just thought, there's got to be something to that that goes beyond or that transcends all of the things that if we want to truly mentor and create lasting, lifelong believers, which is what I want to do as an educator, is help create kids that are lasting, lifelong believers, then I got to be doing that too.
So to that end, one of the things that you do is require your students to create these discipleship plans, these personal discipleship plans for somebody else.
Yes.
So can you talk a little bit about what that looks like in actuality? Because I think there's, you always get like the big words and the big picture, but what does that involve? Because when we're talking about middle school, that's a good age right there to be working with, but you get them. I always would say if you can get those middle schoolers to buy into whatever it is you're doing, you've got them. So what do you do with that? How does that work?
Yeah, so I saw the same thing. That's why I wanted to teach middle school in the first place, was I saw it as the crux of life where I could win a kid forever. Because in elementary, I didn't feel like they were quite old enough to maybe understand, some of the deeper things in life. And by the time they get to high school, sometimes they're convinced they know everything.
Yes.
And so I saw middle school as the shot where, man, I could really alter a kid's life forever. And so what I do in personal discipleship is I teach the kids 13 spiritual disciplines: how to read the Bible, how to pray, how to be a servant, how to walk in forgiveness, how to Sabbath, how to fast, all of these things. And then after I give them all scriptural reference for all these things, we practice them along the way. And so after we do our study on how to read the Bible, we take the next 30 minutes and we break down a passage of scripture together. Or when we do servanthood, I make them go home after I teach them about servanthood, and I say, you have to serve your family or your church in some capacity, and then you have to come back and share the story of what you've done. So some kids might make a meal for their family, they might walk the dog, whatever it is, clean their brother or sister's room, heaven forbid. And so then after they've practiced them all, by the end of it, they understand what each one of them is. And so at their culminating project, I make them write their own lesson plan, and they can include the spiritual disciplines that I've taught them, or if they feel like God has laid another one on their heart, they can partner with me and I'll teach them how to create a new discipline to give to somebody else in their life. But they got to attack somebody in their life to feel like, you know what, either they're a new believer or I'm going to reach somebody new and I'm going to try to disciple that person. And so then they walk through that process of creating that plan for themselves, and I make them do about 4 or 5 of the disciplines, and then they have to present it to the class and share their plan for how they're going to go disciple that person, and then go off and do it. And
I know it's only been a few years, but have you had any feedback? Have you had, when that's the culminating project, what have been the results, I guess?
Feels like there's the potential, for instance, that maybe you're brewing some potential new ministers out there.
Well, I hope so. I've had two responses to it. Number one, I've had the kids come back and tell me, I wish I could take your class again. I wish you would teach more spiritual disciplines. We could go through it some more because I'm sharing it with my small group at church, or I've shared it with my parents, or I've shared it with all these other people. So that's one of the ones that I've had where makes my heart sing, that they're spreading it, because that's the goal. And then secondarily, I've had parents come back to me and say, what are you teaching them in that class? My kid is on fire for Jesus like I've never seen him before. They're reading their Bible, they're spending time in the Word, they're in prayer, and they're sharing it with their friends. What are you doing? And so, because one of the things I do encourage them to do is, hey, I want you to take this home to your family. I want you to go home and teach them. Go show them, and go have discussions around the dinner table together. Go talk about these things with one another. And it's not as though the church isn't doing that, because I believe that they are. But when a student hears it not just at church on Sunday, but that they go to school and hear it too, and then they're getting it at home with their families, it's sort of that perfect triangle of creating this opportunity for a kid to fully blossom and grow in their development of spirituality and be able to walk as a believer for the rest of their life.
Do you find that kids, you came from the public school background of 8 years, and we talk all the time, obviously, about culturally what's going on. Christian schools are exploding now, and that's a very positive thing. But that also means you're talking about people that don't have a lot of background or experience with Christianity. So do you find that you're working with people who are pretty green in their faith walk, both parents and kids? And is that a bigger challenge for you than, say, a kid that's come up all along in Christian school?
That's a good question. I've seen both. I've seen some from families that are, lifelong believers, and the kid has been, in church and been in Sunday school classes for 10 years and, grew up as a believer. And then I've got some that are, just been a believer for a year or two. And in that phase, I think the wonderful thing about getting kids where I have them is that regardless of whether they've believed in Jesus since they were 5 or have just become a believer at 13, 14, or whatever it is, their ability to sort of think about the faith becoming their own faith is just now developing. Because up until that point, when they were a younger child, it was mom and dad's faith. So yeah, we go to church. Yeah, we do. Of course I love Jesus. Mommy and daddy love Jesus, And now at middle school, they're thinking wait a minute. This is my faith. This is my ownership of it. This is for me to internalize and take and run with. And so I see, regardless of where they're coming from, that the students begin to take that and walk on their own, which is really the goal, is to take and transfer that to them. And so regardless of their background, I'm seeing good results from it.
That's such a big deal, because as we've learned just with older kids, at some point, we do what we can. Maybe we haven't done enough. It's always, you never know, but you try to lay that groundwork. But then at some point, you kind of have to, you turn it over to them. And maybe not at 13, 14, but, we have 19, they're older. And, now I'm kind of like, okay, I'm going to explain to you, and I'm going to pray with you or pray for you and talk to you. And, so's your dad. But this is now, you have to take some ownership of it. And I think what you're doing is pretty amazing, because it allows them to take some ownership way sooner, I think, in a way that is also knowledge-based. It's not just a good luck, we've taken you to church and now, believe it or not, do what you want. But I think that's important.
Jacob, I always like to ask people that have come from the public school realm and now have gone into Christian school, what do you say to people judge, but I mean, what do you say to people that have their kids in public school and they're really now feeling a tug? Like, we got to change course here.
Yeah.
You came from that place, so what do you say?
I usually tell them that, it's always your decision. It's always your child. God gave you that child because you're who they need. But for me, as a dad, I could see no greater investment than putting my kid in a Christian school, because I've watched a lot of families who would take their kids to church on Sunday and would go home and have a wonderful home life, and then all week long, the influences that they were at public school would undo all the things that they were working on doing. And at a Christian school, rather than those things being undone, they're being reinforced. They're being supported. They're being pushed. And I've talked to a lot of parents too about, oh man, financially, I don't know that I can do it. And I say, man, I would rather pour into these first 12, 14 years of my child's life. I'd rather pour every dollar I have into establishing who they are now, rather than pour every dollar on the back end trying to undo things that were done. And so I know there's sacrifice involved. My own kids go to Christian school as well. I know there's sacrifice. I know there's commitments to be made, but I don't know that I could make any better decision.
That's
Couldn't say it better.
No.
And for a guy that's only been in it 3 years, that's impressive. Jacob Baker, River Oak Christian in Jefferson City. How big is that school?
We have 175 students this year.
And growing, I'm sure.
Yes, we are. Yes.
Well, congratulations on so early in your Christian teaching career being selected as one of our Teachers of the Year.
Thank you very much.
It's clear your passion is there, and we just so appreciate you sharing it with us.
That's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
A lot of our Teachers of the Year are middle school, high school teachers. It's very rare we get to talk with a Christian school Teacher of the Year who teaches kindergarten, but our next guest does. Mary Kester from Denver, Colorado, St. John Lutheran. Welcome.
Yes, thank you so much.
And
I'm really glad.
Congratulations on Teacher of the Year.
Thank you so much. I'm very humbled.
Have you been to Missouri before? Have you been traveling?
Not a lot. No. Like a little bit on choir tour in college, right? But
I would guess this is probably not the highlight of your life of coming to Missouri, but Teacher of the Year's not bad.
Amazing.
Well, welcome. We are glad to have you. We'll see you in Washington, D.C. for the big honor in a few months. But in the meantime, we wanted to get to know you a little bit, and specifically kindergarten. This is a subject that, on our show, when we talk about parents thinking about making the leap to Christian education, it's generally well after kindergarten.
Sure.
So talk to me about why someone from the very beginning, maybe they've had that little baby and they've had a couple of years at home with the baby, and now they're thinking school for the first time, kindergarten.
Yes.
Why start in kindergarten as a Christian school for a parent?
That's a great question. I talk a lot about how community is so important, and I think community in Christian schools is just even more amazing. I'm biased, but honestly, I think it's the truth, because God has created us to be in community with one another, right? He's created us to be in community with Him and one another. And so when we're in Christian education, we are operating under the truth that every person is made in the image of God, and that's how we should treat one another. And when you follow that, then a beautiful community that loves one another, that's a family, flows out of that, right? And so, definitely our school, and I know at all wonderful, healthy Christian schools, that there are just these strong communities of people that support one another. So why wouldn't you want that for your child from the very beginning, right? To have this strong, tight-knit family that supports one another. And then truly, we want to be inspiring these kiddos' hearts, letting them know from the start that they are saved by Jesus Christ, right?
Is St. John Lutheran kindergarten through what?
Through 8th grade.
8.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Because I was curious when we talk with people that go through kindergarten and younger years as Christian schools, oftentimes it's a smaller community, and then we find out there's a great deal of anxiety for kids when they leave as a younger kid and go into an older Christian school, right?
Sure, yes.
Is it more or less comfortable when kids start in kindergarten? I guess I'm just kind of...
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, and then moving on through. Yeah. I would think so, yes. Yeah. When I see most of our kiddos stay, we have an early learning center as well. So like my 2-year-old went there this past school year and will continue to go there, and they are phenomenal. But yeah, so we have a really high retention rate, and they have these strong bonds with their classmates already. And when they start early, then they just have this beautiful success with relationships and knowing the ropes and the routines, right? But I think, again, just so much of it is that we just have Christ at the center of what we're doing. And why wouldn't you want that for your kiddo from the very beginning?
What is the difference from your perspective? And I know, we try not to bag too much on the public school system. And
yes.
we do, but we don't.
Not.
But I mean, everybody is in a different place.
There are great teachers everywhere, right? Yes.
But
definitely.
Your classroom has to look different than a kindergarten classroom in a public school.
Yeah.
Right? It's going to. So I'm curious how what makes it different? What makes it, I guess, a better place to put your child for the parents that maybe are kind of like, I'm not sure.
I'll add on to that question only because I have, when our daughter was in elementary school, I'm in first and second grade, and I went to like the Dad's Day, and I visited, and I was thinking to myself, I mean, it's like Mexican jumping beans. They're just, I've never seen so much. I mean, it's, it kind of horrified me, to be honest. But her question's a good one. Like, what's the difference between a Christian school kindergartner and that public school Mexican jumping beans?
And the reason I was asking, too, is because I feel like kindergarten has this image behind it of like, yay, like we're cute, we're together, we're all fun, we're all this, but like, so if I can get that in this setting, what's the difference? Why wouldn't I?
That's a great question. Honestly, I feel like a lot of times we're able to have better class sizes for our students versus public education. And so we have great ratios for our kiddos that I can really serve my students so well in my room. I know all of them, and what's going on in their personal lives, right? And that's a great way for me to support them and love on them and their families that you might not necessarily get in a public school, right? When you have those bigger class sizes and such. I can't say that I've been in a lot of public kindergarten classrooms to know what a big difference would be, but I can tell you that, we are a family in our room, but I imagine that other kindergartens do that as well. I don't want to,
No, and I know.
Amazing, right?
There is a difference, and there is something about hearing good news, like, good news, good news versus when you don't hear it. And so like how to bring that in. And I figured that has to be some of it.
And in that classroom format, again, energy's high, attention spans are short. How do you introduce Jesus to kids of that demographic?
Well, honestly, it is not just during Bible time, right? Jesus is a part of our every single day. I mean, my kids hear from me, probably like, yes, Mrs. Kester, we know. But I'm telling them all of the time, you are a precious child of God. You are made in his image. You are unique. He made you. So you need to be the wonderful creation that you are. And we're going to celebrate that all of us are different. Like at the end of the school year, we make these sweet awards where each kindergartner gets one at Kinder Continuum. And we as a class come together to share what we love about each one of our classmates and what special award they should receive. And that I had a student actually just this past school year, he's graduating he already graduated high school, and emailed me and said, I can't tell you how much that meant to me that you gave me that award and it gave me this confidence, like moving on to a new school, and that you just recognized who I was. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah, I'll drag you into a kind of a social commentary question.
Yes.
That exercise and what you said you say regularly to your students. We hear kids, I'll just say kids generally, teenagers, have never been more anxious, have never been more depressed. We hear about all the transgender stuff and gender confusion stuff.
Right.
Is that because they have not been fed a steady diet of what you're prioritizing? You're unique. You were created in his image.
Honestly, I think so. I mean, that needs to be drilled into every single person, especially children as they are developing and their brains are growing, right? They need to hear that, because from all sides and from social media and from the world, they're going to go, oh, I need to do this to be enough. I need to look like this or do that or whatever it happens to be, right? And to hear that, no, you are how God made you, and that's beautiful, and that's enough, and that's worthy, and you are full of value. Yes, they need to hear that.
Oh, so I'll switch it for a minute then, just because that can be a really heavy topic. We were just told by another woman that we were speaking with to ask you about gingerbread. So I'm like,
she warned me.
Yeah, someone told us, make sure you ask her about gingerbread. So what's that about?
Well, I love to bring STEAM into my classroom.
Okay. And tell people what STEAM is for anyone who doesn't know.
Sure. So it stands for science, technology, engineering. They added art, the A, and mathematics. Okay. And it promotes excellent collaborating skills, critical thinking, problem solving. So we do a lot of different things to incorporate STEAM into our classroom. One of them is design challenges.
Okay.
So frequently throughout the year, I pair the kindergartners up, and they have a problem that they need to solve, right? With the gingerbread, we read fun gingerbread stories the whole week and compare and contrast, right? All the fun things. And then we're going to decorate cookies. And we go, well, we've been reading about all these gingerbread characters, and they're a little feisty. I know it's just make-believe, right? These are fiction books. But, we should maybe make some gingerbread traps just in case when we go to pick up our cookies from the kitchen. Yeah. So they're doing their design challenge. It's their second one of the year, and it's so good because at the start they want to just make two things side by side, right? And no, you have to talk together and come up with one idea. Right. So they make their traps. Then we march down to the kitchen. I put on my best acting skills, and I put these in here this morning, and it's empty. And they're like, it's happened. Oh, they get so excited.
I love elementary.
So then it's really the best. So then we go around the school, and all the staff plays it up really well. I don't know, we haven't seen more. Oh yes, we saw them running around. So we get back to our room, and what I've done, I really hope that none of them are listening to this podcast.
You're wrecking it for them.
I have other staff members that come into the room while we're out searching, and they have strategically placed the gingerbread cookies in the traps like they've been cut.
Hilarious.
And then we decorate them.
That's so fun.
I try and get a video of their reaction when they first come into the room. It is priceless. So.
I love it.
This is why Mary's Teacher of the Year.
This is why I want to move and have Mary be not my own kids, but when the grandkids come, I hope you're around and people like you, because I think every school needs the energy and the creativity and just the fun, the true love of what education is about.
And the love of the Lord, most of all.
Amen.
Yes. Congratulations,
Amen.
Mary.
Thank you so much.
We'll see you in Washington.
Sounds great. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, welcome back as we talk to teachers from all over the country for our Christian School Teacher of the Year Awards, which this is our third year, and we've hopped in just about every part of the country this year, which is really cool. We go smack to America's heartland in Nebraska, Lincoln, and Lincoln Lutheran High School. Erin Seitz, another Teacher of the Year. Erin, congratulations and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You have an interesting background. We were just talking before we started recording that not only do you teach art at your school, but you're taking on something new, and I wanted to start there because you're taking on something new. I think a lot of people assume that maybe in a Christian school you're kind of locked in some, the die is cast, you're set in one thing, and that's what you do for decades. You took on something new called social emotional learning, which I'm not even sure what it is, and it's brand new to you. So tell us about that first.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been teaching 6th through 12th grade art. This will be my 9th year starting this fall. And so adding a new subject area this year. Our school is exploding. And so we had to move from 3 sections of middle school to 4 sections, which meant we had to add some extracurricular or exploratory classes is what we call them. And so we added a study skills class and then this social emotional learning. And it really is a great fit for me. I'm just finishing up my master's degree in education, in curriculum and development with an emphasis in trauma and resilience. Okay. And so I've been studying it. I was able to build the foundations for what we wanted our curriculum to be in a paper that I was writing for my course. I got to be on a team, included on the team of researching, selecting, and now implementing the new curriculum. So we'll be spending time focusing on relationship skills, on soft skills that maybe aren't being covered at home by parents anymore because of time, because of adjusting to having screens in front of kids, how to deal with conflict, how to deal with all the things that life throws at us, but a unique blessing that we get to apply God's word on top of that.
Not to sound judgmental when I ask this, but I do. You noted that your school is exploding in size. That is something we hear a lot. And so, are you saying and I don't want to cast aspersions here, are you saying that you're seeing a huge growth of people that maybe don't come from traditional Christian homes and kind of need I don't want to say a reset or maybe a baseline versus kids that have come up in a Christian home all along, or not necessarily?
I would say it's a combination of both.
Okay.
We have, so we're 6 through 12, and we have feeder schools that come into our school, but then we always have a draw of new families to the community, public school kids that need a change. The parents want to change for their kids. But just projecting in those elementary schools, the upcoming class sizes, we're looking at doubling in the next few years, which, we are already full. So full in the sense that, we feel full.
Sure.
So we're not able to be in our classrooms. A lot of us, I think there's 8 of us this year that we can't be in our classroom during our plan period because other teachers have to use our space.
Right.
So the projection of the school exploding is mostly because of those feeder schools. I'm not sure what they're seeing as the reason for their influx, but just, so much growth. Praise God.
Amen.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So with the social emotional learning, so I'm curious because when people hear SEL, it's kind of become a controversial term.
Yeah,
like
it
it's
has.
just as in we don't
politicized, yes.
right, and we don't
It
need
has.
it because of this, or we have to have it. And I can see both sides on it, especially when you're asking every kid to go, not you, but when schools are asking every kid to go through certain programs that maybe not every kid needs. I think all our kids, they need certain things. So I'm curious how you handle any pushback, because when and if I see, certain terms, because they've been politicized, I'm always like, hold up,
Right.
What are we talking about here? So how do you respond to that when it's seen as a negative? It's meant to be a positive, but just like anything, it can go sideways quickly if it's not done well.
Absolutely. And we've been planning ahead for that pushback. We aren't even going to call it social emotional learning.
Yeah.
There will be a new name put on it, which we haven't decided on what it is yet. But I can't anticipate what pushback there will be because we haven't started it yet.
Sure.
But my response just initially would be, what kid doesn't need to learn about friendships? What child doesn't need to learn about how to handle conflict, especially in a spiritual way, in a biblical way?
Well, that's it, right? Is like making sure you're keeping that component first and foremost.
How do I deal with big emotions that I have? The subjects that we'll be covering and the lessons that we'll be covering, it's a curriculum that's able to be shared with parents, that they can see in advance. And I really have a hard time believing that any parent's going to look at that list and say, no, I don't want my child learning about that, especially if they've chosen our school and we're able to apply scripture to what we're doing.
Is that where it strays? Is that where the problem comes in, that maybe sometimes scripture's not applied? Do you think? Is that the problem?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. If maybe...
Perhaps culturally, I guess I'll ask. Is it because culturally we're dealing with things now where kids are thinking they're a different gender? This could go to a place maybe for some where they worry that would be fostered and entertained instead of countered.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right? Is that the danger?
Absolutely. And I think that as we walk the path of teaching it and adding it to our curriculum, those things are going to come up, and we will be able to spend more time looking at what does this look like in public schools right now, and what is the controversy, and we'll cross those bridges when we get there. But it also is amazing because we're able to partner with parents through the curriculum. So the entire curriculum is based on a building community, bringing us all together. So parents get a notification ahead of time, hey, this is what we're covering. Maybe there's some sensitivity in your family. Like, let's talk about that. Let's be in communication about it. So
that's great.
Yeah, it is great.
Teacher, that's a big deal, Erin, and you've done art most of your career.
Yeah.
I assume that's largely why you're here with us. You're a standout in art in Christian school. How do you do that?
Well, I was just having this conversation with another award recipient. I really believe that I have a benefit of when the kids walk into my classroom, they're automatically connected to God because it's a space to create, and we're created in His image, and given the chance to make something out of nothing or something that didn't exist a moment ago, they're subconsciously not even aware that they're being connected to our Creator when they step foot into my room. So it's a space that's safe, and they're able to express themselves in a way that they don't get to in other classrooms. And so it's I focus on making it a room that they can walk into and just feel comfortable, and I'm open as I can be with them so that they can be open back, because I don't think that kids learn from people that they don't like. So anything that I want to translate to them or teach them, whether it is art, whether it's how to follow Jesus, if they're not comfortable or connected to me, they're not going to learn from me. So it's pretty amazing.
Where do you see Jesus in art? I mean, I maybe that's too plain a question, and maybe that's an obvious question, but I'm just curious, how do you implement Christ in art?
I think what I just said, that even just creating is automatically connecting us to God. And there's so many lessons that can be taught. For example, throwing on the pottery wheel. It's made to be this beautiful, eloquent thing that people think is so easy, but it's extremely difficult. And it ends up for most kids being resilience, a persistence. I'm going to fail at this, and I'm going to have to keep going. And so to come alongside them and teach them perseverance in the time of trial and how do we overcome that is another opportunity to teach them about things that the disciples walked through, and having to push through, and maybe on a different scale, but the principles are the same.
How fantastic.
Yeah.
Lincoln Lutheran High School, how old is the school?
Since 1960.
So it's been around.
7 or 8, I think. Yeah, sorry.
And how many students total?
This year we're planning on serving around 370.
Wow. And
so since I've been there, it's been around 310, 315. So we really jumped up this year.
Wow.
Our incoming 6th grade class will be 20% of our school. So it's growing.
Oh
yes.
my gosh.
They clearly value you, and we congratulate you on being one of our
Thank you
Teachers
so
of the
much.
Year.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
We have Rachel Burrow with us now. We are, just moving through our list
Off to
of
South
people.
Carolina.
Yes,
We talked to
love it.
Arizona, now it's South Carolina. Teacher of the Year. Congratulations, Ms. Burrow. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
History.
Yes, sir. 8th grade U.S. history. It's the best.
And I don't know much about South Carolina, but I'm told it's an absolutely beautiful place to live, and that's the home of Bob Jones Academy.
It sure is.
Related to the Bob Jones that we know. Everybody knows
Correct.
that name, but would you explain the affiliation?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So Bob Jones Academy is located on the campus of Bob Jones University. We have made such wonderful, wonderful leaps and bounds at Bob Jones Academy. I just don't even how to encapsulate it all, but my school, I just love my head of school, Doug Abels, and my principal, Larry McCrum, and they have made such great changes at the academy for the better, so it's been great.
Our solicitations for Teacher of the Year go out all across the country, and then we only pick a handful of them every year, and you're one of them.
Yeah, I was kind of shocked too.
Were you shocked? I can tell you right now, having just met you, you're a bundle of energy. I assume that's what they think of you down there in South Carolina too, right? What do you think made you a Teacher of the Year? I know you don't want to brag on yourself, but why do you think?
That is hard to say, but I think really, honestly, for me, more than anything, I think good teachers can build good relationships. And really seeing ourselves in view of Scripture and God's grace in our life and being able to be real and authentic with our students, and then hopefully them seeing that walk in relationship and failures. I mean, I openly share my failures with my students, and there's something just magical that takes place when I can share, I need Jesus too. I'm a sinner too. I serve the same God you do. I don't have all the answers. And I can build those strong foundations and relationships with them. I try to make my class super fun and active and just give a spark of love of learning through various modalities.
So part of that with the way that you're teaching history, which I think some people can be completely bored. I love it. But, so if you tell me we're going to a museum, I'm all in 100%. If you tell maybe my kids, not so much. So how do you do that when you're in the classroom, and how do you do that in a way that keeps that biblical perspective there?
See, I was that student, and that's what's funny. In high school, I hated history. I thought it was so boring just reading the textbook and answering questions. So really, history did not become alive to me until I was even older, because I got a love of learning for it. In my classroom, we do so many different things to make history come alive. I try at least to spark a love of learning for them them that extends outside my classroom, because I really do believe that's what's going to make great citizens. Great citizens are citizens who are going to be involved and impactful in our society at the local level and at the state level. And I hope that when they leave my classroom, I've given them just a hint of our founding fathers and how history actually is Christ history throughout our story, all weaving in through history. We do so many things. We do an American Revolution. They all have a name, and they pick a name that they stay Tory or Loyalist, and they have to be that through the whole thing. And I have a king, Henry, king. They basically have to dress up, and then he taxes the people, and it's pretty amazing. And then I try to do different things that actually bring it to life. Can I share a funny story though?
Absolutely.
So I was sharing with the teacher. This is a flop story. So this is to encourage all the teachers that they are more than welcome to try something and fail, because that's how we grow. It wasn't a total failure of a lesson, but I decided, okay, I'm going to do this lesson where I make my room into surgery bays. And it was after the reconstruction of the Civil War. My husband helped me over the weekend put surgery bays up, and I had trays with all the things. And then we were going to dissect from the Christian biblical perspective after the Civil War, how was the Reconstruction impacted? But then I had this idea to have those blow up hand gloves.
Oh my gosh.
I was like, this is going to be amazing. I'll have blow up hand gloves, and all the students can wear like surgery bays. Every teacher in the school was like, what were you thinking, naming blow up hand gloves to 8th graders? I was like, that was a poor choice. Poor choice right there, But
I bet they all remember.
They do.
They do.
But I really do hope and pray that they can actually gather a love of learning through. We do skits and critical thinking, and we debate like the First Continental Congress. So trying to make the history that's on the textbook come off the textbook page and come alive.
That's a big deal, because I think right now everything feels so crazy when you're looking at everything on a screen, social media. Nothing feels real. You don't know what's true, what's not. But what a great way to kind of join those two together by talking about history, but then saying these are real events that have shaped exactly where we're at today.
Sure.
How long have you taught in Christian education?
So I had a really amazing privilege. My dad was my principal. He was a principal of a Christian school. He was my chemistry teacher.
Oh, wow.
My mom was a Christian school teacher, and she is the quintessential Proverbs 31 lady. She is the most godly woman I know, and she's really my best friend to this day. And I got to witness Christian school parents in the Christian school. Later on life, my dad was getting sick, and so he actually had to move to a public school. So my mom ended up retiring in a public education. So when I went to school, became a teacher, I started at a Christian school, and then I moved to Greenville, and I actually taught in public school for several years. And then I stayed home with my children for many years. So I have a different story than a lot that just teach for many years. I only taught for 3 or 4 years, stayed home with my children, went back to teaching for a couple of years, and decided, no, my kids aren't quite ready. Our family's not ready. And so interestingly enough, last year was my first year back in the classroom at Bob Jones Academy. Yeah. Okay. So
getting an award after 1 year, that's not bad.
I know. I was shocked too. That's why.
Not that you haven't put in more than that. Well, that's spectacular.
That's neat.
You would then be the perfect role model for our new training programs. We've done a series of them now called Making the Leap for teachers who've thought about leaving public education but don't want to leave teaching, and encouraging them to get into Christian education. Some people decide when they leave public education, I'm burned out, I'm done, and they walk away.
And that's fair. I've experienced it.
But we try to encourage people, maybe it's not the love of teaching that you're burned out about.
Absolutely.
It's maybe it's the
environment or the system.
Absolutely. I got frustrated because I couldn't. And again, this goes back to my personal vision and my personal mission statement is, how can I teach without the grace of the gospel? How can I impact these kids' lives without giving them hope? Without, when they come to me with their problems, how do I do that? How do I teach about anything? And I mean, it could be history, anything, without the integration of our faith. And it just became very challenging. The biggest practical frustration for me on a public school level was all the paperwork, all the logistics, all the things we were expected to do for the state level and the state testing. And then after 2 or 3 years, they would change it and you would have to revamp it all again. And it became not about the students. It became about testing and the numbers. And I think just the integration of those two. And interestingly enough, my principal, Larry McCrum, came from a public education background too. And he would say the same thing. He said, he was in a special education classroom and he couldn't share the gospel. You know, he couldn't really be able to have those conversations with kids who needed hope beyond what we could share with them. And so I was burnt out on both ends.
But that's a big use of discernment, just to know, one, I'm burnt out, but two, this is what I need and this is what is missing, which I think when we talk about teachers looking to kind of make that leap,
absolutely,
you've got to be leaning in and listening.
And I'd ask you, Rachel, just because you seem like somebody who would have some wisdom to impart on parents listening in, who maybe have not decided that making the leap is an option to them yet. Maybe God's nudging them, but they're not there yet.
Sure.
Why would you encourage someone to maybe think about a Bob Jones Academy or something like that?
Sure. I mean, I'll be the first to say every family has to pray through and make the decisions for their family. We had to do that. And again, I feel my children actually went to a small country public school where we were at, and I volunteered in it, and they were in there for a couple of years, and we experienced public. They were in a Christian and public, and then now we're definitely back at private. If I could give parents any encouragement, there are so many things that a Christian school offers you that you cannot gain at a public school. When we were in a public school, one of the biggest things that I noticed was just the lack of any basis of Christ. And I know that seems so basic and so, but that was through the children there. That was through what they were reading. That was what was in the library that they were exposed to. It was through things that I was having to combat at home that did not align with our faith and the way that we wanted to raise our children. And it felt like it was, my children were exposed to things, and that's when I said, no, even though they were in there, and it was touted at my hometown where I was from. The principal was a Christian. All the teachers were Christians in this public school. It's a great public school, and I bought into that, thinking that, and so this is not me casting stones by any means. If your children at a public school, we were there, we did it, but we had to make the choice. Do I want the subversive, really lies that are being told through literature, through all these things, through other children speaking to them, that I could not justify that for our family. So that's why, they're in Christian schools now, obviously with me.
I think it's a great message for parents to be hearing.
It is, and we really congratulate you. You are one of a very select group of people this year to be Teacher of the Year.
And now a mouthpiece for everything else.
Now we'll see you in Washington, D.C. to accept your award.
Thank you so much. I'm so humbled and honored, so thank you very much.
So there you have it. That's the end of our part 3, 3 episodes.
Yep.
13 different teachers, 13 different sets of experiences. Loving that we're able to bring them to you, and hopefully that we're offering you some thoughts on your own, if you're ready to make the leap, if you need some solidification on what you've done with your family, or if you're thinking about it as a teacher. Hopefully what you've been hearing over the last 3 weeks has been an inspiration or has been convicting in some way. I know the Holy Spirit, we talked a lot about over the last 3 weeks where the Holy Spirit is moving. And I know definitely even within our own conversations as parents, there have been some really good takeaways. So we are so appreciative that you checked in and listened.
And if in fact you're thinking about this yourself, stay close to the Herzog Foundation. All kinds of resources. If you're a teacher or an administrator or on a board at a Christian school at present and you listen, maybe you've got a teacher that you think would make a great Teacher of the Year to profile next year. We'll have those submissions opening soon.
Probably soon, yeah.
So we'll be headed to the Museum of the Bible in September to honor these 13 people that you've heard over the last 3 weeks, which is my favorite,
quickly. I know, I
favorite part of the whole year. I love
Yeah.
it. And we will see you back here for our next edition of Making the Leap.
Making the Leap is a podcast presentation courtesy of the Herzog Foundation. We'd love your feedback by rating us and commenting on the show.
And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on Making the Leap.